The next section we're going to take on is called Seeking the Vision. We would all like to see more clearly, and these are passages that kind of help us to understand how do we go about gaining access to the greater vision. If you wouldn't mind reading number 15.
Quote 15. Amongst other things is the holding of the meetings for teaching, so that the blessed souls and the old ones from among the believers.
Stop. I am one of the old ones.
May gather together the youths of the love of God.
I presuppose that you are one of those youths.
In schools of instruction, and teach them all the divine proofs and irrefragable arguments, explain and elucidate the history of the cause, and interpret also the prophecies and proofs which are recorded and are extant in the divine books and epistles regarding the manifestation of the promised one, so that the young ones may go in perfect knowledge in all these degrees.
I'd like to draw attention to a few statements there. Divine proofs that we are to, those who have been, shall we say, here longer, and pass on to the next generation. What we've learned are divine proofs, elucidate the history, but this is key. Interpret also the prophecies and proofs which are recorded in the scriptures. Sometimes we think that we're not to try to interpret which, but it doesn't mean that the problem is some people want to say this is the interpretation, when in fact it's only an interpretation. It could be correct, it could be not so correct. The idea is we share what we see that can help someone else get a better start, and even if they change their understanding later, it's part of the process. But I would suggest to you that this is what I'm attempting to do, being of elder years.
So I have a question about prophecies. It seems to me that generally you have certain people that, cling to prophecies and really want to hold on to them. But then you have other people who, whenever they even hear the term prophecy, they kind of reject it and say, okay, this is not going to be scientific. So could you just explain to us what you mean by prophecies and a few examples that you feel are not, in the realm of the miracle or another proof that needs to be a proof for someone who witnesses it?
Well, there's two types of prophecy. One is the one we've heard so much about that turns people off, and that is prophecies of glorious, unscientific, unrealistic hopes of the sky splitting and angels descending and devils running wild on all the kinds of things you've heard. These were basically put to rest, we would have wished, by Jesus Christ, because he went very clearly and went in complete, shall we say, at variance with the over-glorified view of prophecy fulfillment that was with the people of that time. But we've gone right back and repeated it in a strange way. What we're saying is, well, it didn't happen then, but that same thing is going to happen now. And I suggest to you, no, those are things that are never going to happen. Because Jesus was trying to teach us to look to the inner reality of things. And we're going to get into that a little later. But the idea is there is such a thing as valid prophecies. And in fact, in science, they say that when you can duplicate an experiment and predict its outcome, this is one of the evidences that it's true. I would suggest to you that there are prophecies that are so clear, written 2,500 years ago, that have come true, and we know it historically, that it's so phenomenal, it wakes us up to the realization there is genuine prophecy and understanding of prophecy. So we will get into this a little more later on in the course.
And how would you see prophecies as beacons that would lead us towards a particular place?
Well, when you see some prophecies that have been fulfilled, and then they go on to describe what is to happen beyond your day, in other words, what's coming in your day, it has a tendency to alert you, to waken you, to help you more focus on your responsibilities when you begin to understand what's coming and coming soon, and shall we say coming with a roar, because you've understood the past prophecies, you saw how they were fulfilled, and in the same line of thinking, when it goes one step further and shows what's next for you, I suggest to you it's a great motivating power.
So now we will move to quote 16. Inasmuch as it hath been clearly shown that only those who are initiated into the divine mysteries can comprehend the melodies uttered by the bird of heaven, it is therefore incumbent upon everyone to seek enlightenment from the illumined in heart and from the treasuries of divine mysteries, regarding the intricacies of God's faith and the abstruse allusions in the utterances of the daysprings of holiness. Thus will these mysteries be unraveled, not by the aid of acquired learning, but solely through the assistance of God and the outpourings of His grace.
I'd like to offer that we each have to make a decision as to who we wish to listen to. And in a strange way, we are making judgments about who we wish to pay attention to their particular remunerations. But we need to learn, and we need to find out. Like, for example, Mr. Nader Saidi is to me one of the really great minds of our time. And I choose to really read carefully what he has to say, because I can recognize his illumination. And he's able to help unlock many of the mysteries. And I think each one of us now, when I first became a Baha'i, I met a young man whose name was Kavus Bonajemi. And he just lived a way and taught in such a way that he inspired me to, shall we say, speed up the process of integration from being a Christian to a Baha'i. And without him, my life would have really been slowed down. So there are these opportunities, and we need to learn and read and find out about the different aspects of this faith, particularly in dealing with the mysteries. But if we depend on so much amount of heavy reading or acquiring knowledge, I suggest to you that that's not the way true guidance will ultimately come. This passage identifies, and it's in other places too, we need the inspiration of the Holy Spirit. And we have to be able to recognize the Spirit when we see it. And I suggest to you there's a beauty to the power of the Holy Spirit. It does have an element of capturing our imagination towards the noble purposes of life. But we all need to learn to do this. And that's part of that taking flight in the Spirit.
Now there's the phrase in here, the intricacies of God's faith and the abstruse allusions in the utterances of the daysprings of holiness. Why is it that Baha'u'llah and all manifestations of God have included abstruse allusions rather than clear directives?